I never thought the street where my daughter learned to ride her bike would one day smell like fear instead of fresh-cut grass. But that's the thing about life. It doesn't knock before it turns your world upside down. That night, the air had that strange stillness before a storm, thick enough to taste. My daughter, Nadia, was 18, bold, stubborn, and too brave for her own good. For weeks, she'd been live streaming the chaos in our neighborhood, exposing a group of fake community enforcers, men in black pickup trucks wearing cheap badges and barking fake rules. They called themselves Neighborhood Safety Patrol, but what they really were, extortionists with attitude. It started with small things. Phony fines slipped into mailboxes written on paper that looked official enough to fool the elderly. $75 for a crooked trash bin, $100 for an uncoiled garden hose. The first time I saw one of those yellow envelopes, I laughed. But the day I found old Mrs. Sarah on her porch, shaking with tears, holding one in her trembling hands, I knew this wasn't a prank. "They said they'd come back if I didn't pay," she whispered, eyes darting toward the street. My gut twisted. I'd spent enough years in the Navy to recognize intimidation. This was organized fear, dressed up in authority. Nadia didn't share my caution. She set her phone on a tripod, looked straight into the lens, and told her followers she'd catch them in the act. I told her not every fight needed a camera. She just smiled and said, "Bullies hate the light, Dad." I wish she'd been wrong. The first warning came 3 nights later. Around 9, the familiar low growl of that black pickup rolled down our street, slow and heavy like a predator stalking prey. The passenger leaned out the window and tossed an envelope onto our lawn before speeding off. Inside wasn't a fine. It was a Polaroid photo of our porch. Her tripod stood right there, perfectly framed. Across the bottom, scrawled in thick black marker, were 3 words: "Next time we knock." She held it up to the camera during her stream, her jaw set, her eyes defiant. But I saw the flicker of fear beneath the fire. I took the photo from her hand and turned it face down. "No more streaming tonight," I said quietly. I didn't tell her that I recognized the precision behind that threat. Someone was testing how far we'd go before breaking. The next day, I parked near the old strip mall just outside the neighborhood. That's where I saw him, Brandon Kane, leaning against the same black truck, cigarette in hand. Years ago, he'd been my brother in arms. We'd served together in the desert, trusted each other with our lives. But the man I saw that day looked hollowed out, bitter. When I drove past, he didn't notice me, but my chest went cold. Later that night, I called an old friend who ran private security. I asked him to dig. The report came back ugly. Kane had lost everything, his home, his job, and his sanity. Now he was running with these fake enforcers, hiding his anger behind a badge and a uniform that meant nothing. Knowing it was him made everything personal. Days passed in uneasy silence. People pretended life was normal, lawns mowed, sprinklers ticking, kids laughing, but fear ran under the surface. When that black truck cruised by, curtains twitched, doors locked, and voices went quiet. Nadia wouldn't stop, though. She went live again in broad daylight, standing on the porch while the truck idled down the block. "You think you scare me?" she shouted into her camera. The passenger yelled back through a bullhorn, "Keep talking, little reporter. You're already on the list." I stepped onto the porch beside her, staring them down. "Keep driving," I said calmly. "You've got no authority here." They smirked, tossed another envelope, and rolled on. Inside was another photo, our front door this time, with her reflection caught in the glass. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching headlights slide across the walls like ghosts. I told myself it would blow over. I was wrong. On Sunday evening, while the sky still glowed orange, Nadia set up her phone at the end of the driveway for what she said would be her last stream for a while. "Just want to update everyone," she said into the camera. "The fake enforcers haven't shown up today. Maybe they finally got scared." But even as she spoke, I heard the neighbor's dog bark, a sharp, panicked sound I'd come to dread. My chest tightened. A second later, the black pickup screeched around the corner, engine roaring like a beast off its chain. "Nadia!" I shouted, sprinting toward her. She turned just as the truck jumped the curb. The front bumper clipped her hip, and in an instant, she was down. The rear tire rolled over both her legs before the truck swerved off. Her scream split the air, high, raw, and human in a way that burns into your bones. I dropped beside her. Her legs were twisted, blood pooling fast. "It's okay, I've got you," I whispered, though my voice shook. She clung to my arm, crying, "Dad, I can't move." Somewhere above the roar of my heartbeat, I heard the truck's engine rev again, like it was coming back for more. That was the moment instinct took over. I ran for the porch, yanked open the hall closet, and grabbed the locked case. The code beeped beneath trembling fingers. When I stepped back outside, the world had slowed to something deadly quiet. The truck was backing up fast, its tires screeching, headlights flooding the yard like a searchlight. I planted my feet by the mailbox, Glock steady in both hands. My breath slowed the way it used to before everything went loud overseas. The driver revved again, aiming straight toward us. I lined my sights on the front tire and squeezed once. The tire burst in a spray of rubber and smoke, the truck jerking sideways into Mrs. Sarah's flower bed. The passenger door flew open and a man stumbled out, broad-shouldered, wearing a faded tactical vest and a cheap tin badge clipped to it. His shotgun gleamed under the porch light. "Put it down," I warned, voice calm, gun low but ready. He froze, breathing hard. From somewhere inside the cab, a radio crackled, a voice I hadn't heard in years but would never forget. "Finish it. No witnesses." Brandon Kane. My old brother, now a ghost giving orders from the dark. The man with the shotgun flinched, unsure, caught between command and conscience. "Don't," I said firmly. "You point that, and you die here tonight." For a moment, time held still. Then porch lights flicked on one by one up and down the street. Neighbors stepped out, phones in hand. The fake enforcer's eyes darted, panic flickering. The shotgun clattered to the ground. I heard sirens long before I saw the red and blue flash. The pickup driver tried to run, but the blown tire dragged him halfway across the yard before 2 officers tackled him. I lowered my weapon, emptied the magazine, and handed it grip first to the first cop on scene. Nazia was already in the ambulance, pale but conscious, clutching her phone. Even then, she whispered, "Did we get them?" I nodded. "Yeah, baby. We got them." The days that followed were a blur of hospitals, interviews, and headlines. Nazia's livestream had captured everything. The attack, the threats, the voices. Reporters called her the girl who stood up to fear. To me, she was just my kid, the one who'd inherited my stubborn fire and her mother's courage. Brandon Kane was arrested 3 towns over. When they played the recording of his voice in court, the words, "Finish it." "No witnesses." He couldn't look up. 15 years. That's what the judge gave him. His crew got 10 each. The day of sentencing, I watched him being led away in shackles, and for a second, I saw not a monster, but the man who once pulled me from a burning convoy overseas. War takes pieces from people. Some never get them back. Months later, Nazia came home from rehab, walking slow, braces glinting under the sun. The neighborhood changed, too. Real security hired, new flowers planted where the truck had torn through lawns. For the first time in months, kids played outside again. Every time I heard a pickup engine, my body tensed. But the fear didn't own me anymore. One evening, almost a year later, she and I walked to the lake. The water rippled gold under the sunset. She hooked her arm through mine and asked softly, "It's finally over, right?" I looked at her, steady, scarred, smiling, and said, "Almost. Some wounds take longer than bones to heal." We stood in silence, watching the light fade, both of us breathing easy for the first time in forever. That night I uploaded our story, not to chase views or sympathy, but because silence is what bullies feed on. Courage isn't born in peace. It's forged in the moments when you refuse to back down. If you've ever faced something like this, if you've stood your ground when it would have been easier to stay quiet, tell your story. Because every time someone speaks, the darkness shrinks a little more.